The quiet town of Plainfield, Wisconsin seemed peaceful enough in the 1950s. A small farming community where everyone knew each other and life moved slowly. But hidden in the shadows of this idyllic rural town was a dark and twisted secret. A secret that would horrify the nation and inspire some of the most terrifying characters in cinematic history. At the center of this nightmare was Ed Gein, a seemingly quiet and unassuming man who lived alone on his family's isolated farm. He wasn't someone the townspeople paid much attention to. He did odd jobs here and there, and though he seemed a bit strange, no one could have imagined the horrors that lay within his home. Ed was born in 1906 to George and Augusta Gein. His father was an alcoholic, and his mother was a domineering and fanatically religious woman. She believed that all women, except herself, were instruments of the devil. She preached these beliefs to Ed and his older brother Henry, isolating them from the outside world. Ed grew up under his mother's suffocating influence, developing an unhealthy attachment to her. When his father died in 1940, and later his brother in 1944, Ed was left alone with his mother. Her death in 1945 devastated him. She was the only person he had ever truly connected with. After she passed, Ed sealed off most of the rooms in the house, keeping them as they had been when his mother was alive. He confined himself to just a few rooms, living in squalor and sinking deeper into madness. But Ed's madness didn't stay confined to his home. It spilled out in ways that would shock even the most hardened investigators. On November 16, 1957, a local hardware store owner, Bernice Worden, disappeared. Her son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden, entered the store and found the cash register open and blood on the floor. Frank immediately suspected Ed Gein, who had been in the store the previous night and mentioned returning the next morning for antifreeze. When the police arrived at Ed's farm, they were met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. Inside his filthy home, they discovered the decapitated body of Bernice Worden hanging upside down in a shed. But that was just the beginning. As they searched the house, they found human skulls used as bowls, chairs upholstered with human skin, a lampshade made from a human face, and a suit made entirely from the skin of women. It became horrifyingly clear that Ed Gein had been robbing graves, exhuming bodies to satisfy his grotesque obsessions. He later admitted to making at least 40 nocturnal visits to local cemeteries, where he dug up recently buried women who reminded him of his mother. But Ed didn't stop at grave robbing. In addition to Bernice Worden, authorities linked him to the disappearance of Mary Hogan, a tavern owner who had vanished 3 years earlier. Inside Gein's home, they found her face, preserved and turned into a mask. When questioned by police, Ed calmly explained his actions. He admitted to digging up bodies and fashioning macabre souvenirs from their remains. He wanted to create a woman suit so he could become his mother, to literally crawl into her skin and feel close to her again. His fixation with his mother had driven him to commit these unspeakable acts. Ed Gein's trial was brief. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity and was committed to a mental institution where he spent the rest of his life. He died in 1984 at the age of 77, having never fully comprehended the horror and shock his actions had caused. Ed Gein's story is one of the most disturbing in American history, not just because of the gruesome nature of his crimes, but because of the profound psychological trauma that fueled his actions. He wasn't a typical serial killer, motivated by pleasure or power. Instead, his crimes were driven by a deep-seated need to reconnect with his dead mother, a need so powerful it led him to mutilate bodies and desecrate graves. While Ed Gein was only officially convicted of 2 murders, his legacy as a murderer and grave robber lives on. His crimes shocked the nation and left a permanent scar on American culture. The horrifying details of his life inspired some of the most infamous characters in horror cinema: Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. But beyond the movies, the story of Ed Gein is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human mind. A darkness that, if left unchecked, can lead to horrors beyond imagination. His tale continues to fascinate and terrify us, not just because of the gruesome nature of his crimes, but because it forces us to confront a terrifying possibility that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they live right next door, hiding behind the face of an unassuming, quiet man.